December 16th, 1944. 0502 hours. The Eiffel Forest, near the Belgian-German border. The darkness is absolute, a suffocating velvet that smells of damp pine needles and frozen mud. Unteroffizier Hans Weber crouches in a shallow trench, his breath forming thick, ragged plumes of white steam. He cannot feel his toes. They have been numb for 3 days, ever since the freezing rain turned the Ardennes into a slushy purgatory. He wears a threadbare greatcoat, the wool so thin from years of service that it feels more like paper than protection. Beneath it, his uniform is a patchwork of repairs. His stomach lets out a low, hollow growl, a sound more consistent than the distant rumble of the front line. For breakfast, Weber had a single slice of Kommissbrot, a dense black bread that the soldiers whispered was made of 50% sawdust and 20% despair. To wash it down, he had ersatz, a bitter, dark liquid brewed from roasted acorns and chicory. It provided heat but no energy. It was a lie in a cup, much like the propaganda he had been hearing from Berlin. Beside him, young Private Muller is fumbling with his Mauser K98K. The boy is barely 17, a member of the Volksgrenadier units, the People's Grenadiers, scraped from the bottom of Germany's manpower barrow. Muller's helmet is too large. It wobbles when he moves, making him look like a turtle trying to retreat into its shell. "Jet the action again, Muller," Weber whispers, his voice a dry rasp. "The ice will seize the boat if you don't keep it moving." "My hands won't move, Hans," the boy stammers. His teeth are chattering with a rhythmic metallic sound. Weber looks down the line. Hidden in the trees are the silhouettes of Panzer IVs and the massive, hulking shapes of king tigers. They look terrifying, like prehistoric beasts waiting to pounce. But Weber knows the truth. To get these tanks into position, the German High Command had to use teams of horses to pull the heavy artillery. They had to siphon fuel from transport trucks just to give the panzers enough blood for the first 30 miles of the advance. The German army, once the most motorized and modern force on the planet, had been forced back into the age of the beast of burden. Across the valley, hidden by the fog and the arrogance of a certain victory, lie the Americans, the Amis. To Weber, the Americans were a mystery. He had fought the Soviets at the gates of Moscow, where the war was a brutal, primal struggle of starvation against starvation. But the Americans were different. They were loud. They were well-fed. Even their artillery sounded different. Not the desperate, concentrated bursts of the German batteries, but a casual, endless rain of steel that suggested they had shells to waste. "Do you think they have real coffee over there?" Muller asked suddenly, staring into the mist toward the American lines. "They have everything over there," Weber says, thinking of the rumors. "They say every American soldier gets a package from home every week. Chocolate, real tobacco, meat that doesn't come from a horse." "It's not possible," Muller scoffs, though his eyes betray his hunger. "The U-boats would sink it all. The Atlantic is a graveyard." "The Atlantic is an American lake now, boy. Look at the sky." Weber points upward. Even in the darkness, the silence of the Luftwaffe is deafening. For days, the German soldiers had prayed for the thick, heavy fog that currently blankets the forest. They call it Hitler weather. As long as the fog stays, the dreaded American Jabos, the P-47 Thunderbolts, cannot see them. But the moment the sun breaks through, the Americans will own the air. Suddenly, the world turns white. 1,000 German guns fire at once. The ghost front is no longer silent. The concussion is so powerful that it knocks the wind out of Weber's lungs. The sky behind him is a strobe light of orange and yellow flashes as the Nebelwerfers, the screaming Mimis, launch their rockets. The sound is a terrifying, high-pitched howl that rips through the freezing air, followed by the dull, rhythmic thud of heavy howitzers. "Forward!" The shout echoes down the line. "Los! Los!" Weber surges out of the trench, his boots slipping on the frozen earth. He isn't thinking about the Reich. He isn't thinking about the Fuhrer. He is thinking about the American depots. He is thinking about the food. As they sprint through the shattered trees, the smell of cordite fills the air, sharp and metallic. The American front line, manned by the Green 1006th Infantry Division, is a scene of pure, unadulterated chaos. The GIs, many of whom had only been in Europe for a few weeks, are being vaporized in their foxholes. Those who survive are scrambling out of their sleeping bags, many without boots, clutching their M1 Garans in a blind panic. Weber vaults over a fallen log and finds himself in an American dugout. It is empty, the occupants having fled seconds before. He pauses, his chest heaving. On a small folding table sits a metal cup. Steam is still rising from it. He picks it up. It is real coffee, not acorns, not chicory. It is dark, rich, and smells like a dream he had forgotten. Beside it lies a half-eaten bar of Hershey's chocolate. He grabs the chocolate and shoves it into his mouth. The sweetness is so intense it makes his head swim. It is a sensory overload, a reminder of a civilian life that feels like it belonged to another man in another century. "Hans, move!" Muller screams, running past the dugout. Weber shakes himself. He pockets the coffee cup, a prize more valuable than an iron cross, and grips his MP-40. The breakthrough is working. The Americans are falling back in droves. For the first time in months, the German soldiers feel a surge of the old lightning, the blitzkrieg spirit. They are moving fast, bypassing pockets of resistance, their eyes fixed on the horizon. But as the day progresses, the adrenaline begins to mask a growing realization. Every mile they advance, they find more abandoned American equipment, not just guns and tanks, but stuff. They pass a ditched American Jeep. In the back are crates of woolen socks, still in their plastic wrapping. Weber looks at his own feet wrapped in damp, rotting rags. He sees a pile of discarded K-rations, sturdy waxed boxes that contain entire meals. To the German soldier, who had been told for years that the American home front was collapsing under the weight of the war, these sights are confusing. The Americans aren't just fighting. They are living in luxury compared to the men of the Wehrmacht. By the evening of the 17th, Weber's unit has reached a small Belgian village near a vital crossroads. The Americans have pulled out in a hurry, leaving behind a massive supply dump. Lieutenant Vogel, the company commander, stands in the center of the road, looking at a stack of American crates that reaches higher than his head. "Don't stop," Vogel commands, though even his voice sounds hollow. "Secure the perimeter. We need the fuel. If there is no gasoline, we are dead men walking." Weber leads Muller and 3 others toward a large canvas-topped truck that had slid into a ditch. The engine is still warm, ticking as it cools in the evening air. "Check the cargo," Weber orders. Muller climbs into the back of the truck. Weber hears the sound of wood splintering as the boy prees open a crate with his bayonet. There is a long silence. "Muller? Is it fuel? Is it ammo?" Muller's head pops out from under the canvas. His face is pale and his hands are shaking. "No, Hans," the boy whispers. "It's not ammo. You need to see this." Weber climbs up and peers into the dark interior of the truck. Inside, the light of his flashlight reveals dozens of white, circular tins. They are stacked neatly, protected by layers of wax paper and cardboard. He reaches out and picks one up. It is heavy. He pries the lid off. Inside, sitting in a nest of pristine paper, is a thick, dark, moist chocolate cake. It is topped with a rich fudge frosting, and in the center, there is a small decorative sprig of holly made of sugar. Weber stares at it. He doesn't move. He doesn't eat. The cake is fresh. It hasn't been sitting in a warehouse for months. It has the unmistakable look of something that was baked only a few days ago. Weber looks at the shipping label on the side of the crate. It is addressed to a private first class in the 101st Airborne. The return address is a bakery in Philadelphia. The realization hits Weber like a physical blow to the chest. Philadelphia is 3,000 miles away. Between that bakery and this muddy ditch in Belgium lies the widest ocean in the world, a continent-spanning logistics chain and a naval blockade that Germany had claimed was impenetrable. The Americans hadn't just shipped bullets. They hadn't just shipped fuel. They had the excess capacity, the sheer, arrogant industrial might to ship a fresh chocolate cake across the world for a single soldier's Christmas. "Hans," Muller says, his voice trembling, "if they have enough ships to send cake, how many ships do they have for tanks?" Weber looks at the cake, then at his own dirt-caked, frost-bitten hands. The victory of the morning, the breakthrough, the artillery, it all feels like a theater performance. They are an army of ghosts fighting an army of giants. He hears the distant rumble of the American artillery. It sounds louder now, constant, unstoppable. The silence inside the truck is heavier than the shelling outside. Weber stands frozen, the tin of chocolate cake held in his hands like a holy relic or a death warrant. Beside him, Muller has stopped shaking. The boy is staring at the cake with a hollow, wide-eyed expression that isn't hunger. It's a dawning, terrifying comprehension. They sent this for one man? Muller whispers, his voice barely audible over the idling engine of a nearby Panzer that is coughing on its last fumes of gasoline. Weber doesn't answer. He looks deeper into the truck. It isn't just one cake. There are dozens. And beyond the cakes are crates of oranges, bright, citrus-scented fruit that looks like fallen pieces of the sun in the gray gloom of the Ardennes. There are cartons of Camels and Lucky Strikes, enough to supply a whole German regiment for a month. There are tins of turkey, cans of cranberry sauce, and white bread rolls wrapped in cellophane. This isn't a supply truck. It's a rolling monument to American excess. Weber thinks of the victory they had been promised. The High Command had spoken of the Endsieg, the final victory built on the superior will of the German soldier. But as he stands in the back of this truck, Weber realizes that will is a poor substitute for a nation that can treat the most brutal war in human history as a logistical problem to be solved with sugar and shipping lanes. "Eat it," Weber commands suddenly, his voice sharp. "What?" Muller blinks. "Eat the cake, Muller. Eat the oranges. Cram as much as you can into your pockets. We move in 10 minutes. Muller doesn't need to be told twice. He digs a handful of the dark, fudge-covered sponge out of the tin and shoves it into his mouth. He groans, a sound of pure, primal pleasure. But Weber watches the boy's eyes. Even as he eats, Muller is looking at the crates with a growing sense of inferiority. Weber takes a bite himself. The chocolate is rich, expensive, and tastes of a world where people don't have to boil boot leather for soup. It is the taste of a country that isn't losing, a country that hasn't even begun to feel the pinch of war. "Unteroffizier Weber!" a voice barks from the road. Weber jumps, nearly dropping the cake. He looks out from the canvas flap. Lieutenant Vogel is standing there, his face smeared with grease and soot. He looks at the chocolate on Weber's chin, and his eyes flash with a momentary, hungry fire, but he suppresses it with the rigid discipline of the Prussian officer corps. "Get your men out of that truck," Vogel orders. "The 1st SS Panzer Division is pushing through the crossroads. We have to clear the road for Piper's column. Leave the loot." "Sir," Weber says, jumping down from the truck bed, "you need to see this cargo. It's not just food. It's Tom. It's a message." Vogel glances into the truck. He sees the oranges. He sees the chocolate. His jaw tightens. He knows exactly what it means. He had been in Normandy. He had seen the Red Ball Express, the endless line of American trucks that ran 24 hours a day, moving mountains of supplies. "I don't care if it's the Holy Grail, Weber," Vogel spits, though he looks away from the fruit. "We have a schedule. If we don't reach the Meuse River by the 20th, the whole offensive collapses. Now move!" Weber signals his squad. They scramble out of the ditch, their bread bags bulging with stolen American luxury. They fall into line as the massive guttural roar of Maybach engines fills the air. From the east, the spearhead of the SS arrives. These are the elite, the men of Kampfgruppe Piper. Their King Tiger tanks are terrifying sights, 68 tons of sloped steel and 88mm Fury. The tank commanders sit high in their hatches, wearing black tunics, their faces set in grim masks of determination. They look invincible. But Weber, watching them pass, notices something he hadn't seen before. The tanks are moving slowly, too slowly, and behind the giant tigers come the infantry, and many of them are on foot or riding on horse-drawn carts. The mighty German war machine is a centaur, half modern steel, half medieval muscle. The contrast is now a physical ache in Weber's chest. Behind him, the American truck with its fresh cake and its limitless oranges sits abandoned in the ditch, a tiny fragment of a supply chain that stretches back to factories in Detroit and bakeries in New York that the German Luftwaffe couldn't even dream of reaching. As they march toward the sound of the guns at Saint, Vieth, the fog begins to swirl. The Hitler weather is holding, but it feels different now. It feels like a shroud. They pass a group of American prisoners being led to the rear. The GIs are disarmed, their heads bowed against the cold, but Weber notices their boots. Every single one of them has sturdy, waterproof combat boots. Their overcoats are thick and heavy. Even in defeat, the Americans look better equipped than the Germans do in victory. One of the prisoners, a tall, thin sergeant with a bloody bandage on his arm, catches Weber's eye. The American looks at the bulging pockets of Weber's tunic, where the silver foil of a Hershey bar is sticking out, and a faint, mocking smile touches his lips. It's a look that says, "Go ahead, eat it. We have plenty more where that came from. Keep your eyes front, Muller," Weber barks, noticing the boy staring at the prisoners. "Hans," Muller whispers, his voice cracking. "I heard the Americans have a floating ice cream factory in the Pacific. My cousin in the Navy told me. I thought he was lying. I thought it was just stories to make us afraid." Weber thinks of the cake, the moisture of the sponge, the sugar sprig of holly. "It wasn't a story," Weber says. "The march continues into the night." The temperature drops further, the moisture in the air turning into a fine, stinging ice that needles their skin. They reach the outskirts of a small hamlet where the American resistance has suddenly stiffened. The green troops of the 106 have been replaced by the veterans of the 7th Armored Division. The Ghost Front has woken up. Weber's squad is ordered to take a line of houses on the edge of the village. The American artillery is no longer distant. It is landing among them with terrifying precision. Each explosion is a reminder of that industrial might. The Americans don't need to aim perfectly because they can afford to carpet the entire forest in high explosives. Weber dives for cover behind a stone wall as a shell screams overhead, shattering a nearby chimney. He pulls out a piece of the cake, now crushed and cold, and shoves it into his mouth. It's no longer a treat. It's a fuel of desperation. He looks at Muller, who is huddled in a doorway, his rifle shaking in his hands. "How long until the fuel runs out, Hans?" Muller asks. Weber looks at the road. A German half-track has stalled 50 yards back. The soldiers are frantically trying to siphon fuel from a civilian car they found in a barn. "It doesn't matter," Weber says, looking at the dark, heavy clouds. "If the sun comes out, the fuel won't save us. If the sun comes out, the boys who sent that cake will send their planes, and there is no cake in the world that can stop a thunderbolt." As if in response, a flare goes up over the American lines, bathing the snow-covered field in a harsh, artificial white light. The Americans are counterattacking, and they aren't coming with horses. They are coming with a wall of steel, fueled by a nation that hasn't even begun to fight. The white glare of the American flare hangs in the sky like a second, colder sun. Beneath its light, the Ardennes forest is transformed into a jagged landscape of long, skeletal shadows. Weber grips the cold steel of his MP-40, his knuckles white. The sweetness of the chocolate cake still lingers in the back of his throat, but it has turned cloying and heavy like a stone in his gut. Across the field, the Americans begin their advance. This is not the panicked retreat of 2 days ago. These are the men of the 7th Armored, and they are moving with the methodical, rhythmic violence of a machine. From the tree line, the distinctive thud-thud-thud of M2 Browning. 50 caliber machine guns begins to chew through the stone walls of the hamlet. The rounds are massive, tracers arching through the dark like red-hot needles, punching holes through brick and bone alike. "They aren't stopping!" Muller screams over the din. He fires a frantic shot from his Mauser, his bolt-action rhythm hopelessly slow against the torrent of semi-automatic and automatic fire coming back at them. "Hold your fire until they clear the hedge," Weber roars. He looks to his left. A German Panzer IV shifts its turret, the long 75mm gun searching for a target. It fires, a brilliant flash and a roar that shakes the earth. And an American M4 Sherman tank at the edge of the woods erupts in a plume of sparks. For a moment, Weber feels a surge of pride. We can still kill them. We are still the masters of the Panzer. But then, his heart sinks. Out of the smoke of the burning Sherman, 3 more emerge. Then 4. Then 6. The Americans don't care about a single loss. They don't have to. For every tank the Germans destroy, the factories in Flint and Detroit have already built 10 more. The Germans are playing a game of chess where they have only 3 pieces left, while the Americans have a bucket of spare queens under the table. "Hans, look!" Muller points a shaking finger toward the rear of the village. Vogel's command half-track is trying to reverse, but the engine is sputtering. It lets out a final pathetic puff of blue smoke and dies. The soldiers nearby don't reach for tools. They reach for canisters, desperately trying to shake the last drops of fuel from their transport trucks. It's over. Weber whispers to himself. The cake. The cake was the warning. He remembers the shipping label again. Philadelphia, a city that hasn't seen a bomb, a city where the streetlights stay on at night, a city where the bakeries are full enough to send treats to a forest in Belgium. He looks at his men. Men with hollow cheeks, lice-ridden uniforms, and boots held together with wire, and he realizes they aren't fighting a war. They are fighting a tide. You can shoot a soldier, but you cannot shoot a tide. The engagement intensifies. The American artillery, the steel rain, begins to walk its fire toward their position. The shells don't just explode, they scream. The Americans are using proximity fuses, a secret technology Weber doesn't understand, that causes the shells to detonate in the air, raining shrapnel down into the trenches and foxholes. Get inside! Weber grabs Muller by the collar and yanks him into the cellar of a ruined farmhouse. They hit the dirt just as a shell detonates directly above the roof. The world turns into a roar of falling timber and choking dust. Weber coughs, his lungs burning. In the flickering light of the fires outside, he sees Muller huddled in the corner, clutching his bread bag. The bag is torn, and the remains of the chocolate cake have spilled out into the dirt, mixing with the filth and the debris. Muller looks at the ruined cake and begins to laugh. It's a high, shrill, broken sound. The cake is dirty, Hans, the boy giggles, his mind finally snapping under the weight of the shelling. We have to tell the Americans. We have to tell them their cake fell in the mud. They'll send another one. They'll send 1,000. Shut up, Muller. Weber crawls over and shakes the boy, but Muller's eyes are vacant. Weber sits back against the cold stone wall. He reaches into his own pocket and finds a crumpled piece of mail he had taken from the American truck. It's a letter from a girl named Sarah in Ohio. It talks about a Christmas tree, about a dog named Buster, and about how she can't wait for the war to be over so they can go to the cinema. It is so mundane, so normal, and that is what terrifies Weber. To the Germans, this war is an existential struggle for the survival of the race. To the Americans, it is a job, a chore, a distraction from the life they are eager to get back to, a life of movies, dogs, and fresh chocolate cake. 0800 hours, December 23rd. The sun begins to rise. Weber peers out from the cellar ruins. The fog, the Hitler weather that had protected them for so long, is thinning. The freezing wind is blowing it away, revealing a sky of brilliant crystalline blue. It is a beautiful morning, and it is the end of the German army. From the west comes a low, rhythmic hum. It grows into a thrum, then a roar that vibrates in the teeth. Weber looks up. The sky is filled with silver specks. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The Jabos have arrived. P-47. Thunderbolts and P-51 Mustangs dive out of the sun, their silver bellies flashing. They aren't looking for the infantry. They are looking for the blood. They target the fuel trucks, the ammunition sleds, and the stalled panzers. Weber watches as a flight of thunderbolts skips bombs into a line of German transport wagons. The horses are vaporized, the wagons are splintered into toothpicks. The fuel dump they had fought so hard to capture on the first day is turned into an inferno. Lieutenant Vogel stumbles out into the yard, his Luger drawn, firing uselessly at the planes screaming overhead. He looks like a man trying to stop a hurricane with a cap gun. "Retreat!" Vogel screams, though there is nowhere to go. "Back to the ridge! Fall back!" Weber grabs Muller and forces him to his feet. They run. They run through the snow, through the fire, and through the wreckage of their own dreams. As they sprint, Weber sees a German Tiger II abandoned in the middle of a field. Its crew is standing beside it, watching it burn. They hadn't been hit. They simply ran out of gasoline. They had the best tanks in the world. They had the most experienced soldiers. They had the will. But the Americans had the cake. As Weber reaches the tree line, he looks back one last time at the village. An American tank, an M4A3E8, EZ-8, rumbles over the very wall he had been hiding behind. On the back of the tank, strapped to the gear, is a wooden crate. Even from this distance, Weber knows what's inside. The Americans aren't just winning, they are delivering. The retreat from the Ardennes is no longer an organized military movement. It is a slow, freezing crawl into the abyss. The snow, which had been a tactical ally just a week prior, has become a relentless executioner. Unteroffizier Weber stumbles through the knee-deep drifts of the Loschheim Gap, his breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. Behind him, the young Muller is a ghost, his eyes fixed on the heels of Weber's boots, his mind seemingly locked in that cellar with the ruined chocolate. The steel torrent has fully arrived. The blue sky above is no longer a canopy. It is a highway for the most powerful air force in human history. Every few minutes, the squad has to dive into the freezing slush as the scream of Merlin and Pratt & Whitney engines heralds another strafing run. The German army's retreat is marked by a trail of blackened iron. Every road is a graveyard of abandoned vehicles, not because they were outfought in a duel, but because their hearts simply stopped beating for want of a few gallons of petrol. Weber passes a column of the 12th SS Panzer Division. These were the Hitler Youth, the most fanatical fighters the Reich had left. Now they are boys with hollow eyes, pulling carts by hand. He sees a group of them huddled around a small fire made of broken crates. They are cooking meat. They are boiling hemlock and pine needles, trying to extract some semblance of heat for their frozen guts. One of the boys looks up at Weber. He is holding a small, silver-wrapped object. It is a Hershey's wrapper, licked clean until the paper is thin. The boy is chewing on the wrapper itself, trying to coax the last molecule of sugar from the fibers. "Did you find the truck, Sergeant?" the boy asks, his voice a dry whisper. "The ones with the bread?" Weber doesn't answer. He cannot tell them that the trucks he found didn't just have bread. They had the luxury of a civilization that had already forgotten the Germans were even a threat. He thinks of the Philadelphia bakery. He thinks of the girl, Sarah, and her dog, Buster. To those people, the war was a series of headlines and a temporary shortage of rubber. To the men in this forest, it was the end of the world. "Keep moving," Weber grunts, hauling Muller upward by his webbing. "If you stop, the frost takes you. If the frost doesn't, the Jabos will." By the 26th of December, the German spearheads have been completely blunted. The Bulge is being squeezed from the north by Montgomery and from the south by Patton. Patton's Third Army has performed a logistical miracle that Weber's commander said was impossible, pivoting an entire army 90 degrees in the middle of a winter storm to relieve the paratroopers at Bastogne. Weber reaches a high ridge overlooking a valley near Houffalize. From this vantage point, the sheer scale of the defeat is laid bare. Below him, an American armored column is moving. It is a river of olive drab. Hundreds of Shermans, hundreds of M3 half-tracks, and thousands of deuce-and-a-half trucks. The Americans aren't even bothering to hide. They have their headlights on as the sun begins to set. They are loud, they are fast, they are confident. Weber reaches into his bread bag and finds a small, crushed box he had grabbed from the truck 4 days ago. He had forgotten about it. He opens it. Inside is a small, hand-painted Christmas ornament, a glass ball with "Merry Christmas, 1944, written in white glitter. It survived the shelling. It survived the retreat. It survived the collapse of the Third Reich's last hope. He looks at the ornament, then at the endless column of American steel below. "Hans," Muller says, standing beside him. The boy looks older now, the innocence burned out of him. "Why did we start this, if they had so much? Why did we think we could take it from them?" "We didn't start it to take their cake, Muller," Weber says, his voice devoid of emotion. "We started it because our leaders believed that will was stronger than steel. They believed that a man who is willing to die is stronger than a man who is well fed." He tosses the glass ornament into the snow. It doesn't break, it just sinks into the white powder, its red glitter mocking the gray landscape. "They were wrong," Weber whispers. "A well-fed man has something to live for. A man with a cake waiting for him at the end of the line will fight harder than a man with nothing but a grave." The Battle of the Bulge would continue for another month, but for the men of Weber's squad, the war ended at that crossroads. The realization that swept through the German ranks wasn't sparked by the loss of a city or the death of a general. It was sparked by a desert. It was the psychological collapse of an entire army. The German soldier realized that he wasn't just fighting an army, he was fighting a planet. He was fighting a factory that never closed, a farm that never went fallow, and a bakery that could ship affection and comfort across a war-torn ocean. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting the Ardennes into a final icy shadow, Weber leads his men toward the American lines. They aren't charging with bayonets, they are walking with their hands up. In Weber's pocket, the last thing he carries is a small, empty tin that once held chocolate cake. He keeps it as a reminder, not of the sweetness, but of the power of a nation that could win a war not just with its guns, but with its abundance. As they approach the first American outpost, a young GI, barely older than Muller, steps out from behind a tree. He is chewing gum. He looks at the bedraggled, starving Germans and doesn't reach for his rifle. Instead, he reaches into his pocket. "You guys look hungry," the GI says in broken German. He tosses a bar of chocolate toward them. It lands in the snow at Weber's feet. Weber looks at the chocolate. He looks at the American. Then he begins to cry. Not for his country, but for the years he spent believing that the world could be conquered by hunger and hate when it was already owned by those who had enough to share.